Hey, this is Paul Sinenko, and welcome to Learn DGLux5 channel. This week, we're talking about REST calls. We're going to take a look at how to make REST calls from your client side to external resources to get you data for the application. So we're going to learn how to construct a header, how to construct the body of the request, how to send it out, and how to parse the data back into something useful we can actually employ in our application. So this is going to be packed with information and should be a fun one. So buckle up and I'll see you on the other side. All right, so we're here at the controls and let's explore what it takes to make an API call. REST API call, to be precise in this case. So the tools to do that you'll find as same place you would find most of the tools is in your data flow. So let's jump to data flow. And the block that we need is called string loader. Let me just remove the search query or search for str. Then this is what I want. This is a block to simply get a web resource, right? To upload, for example, some data to the file system here, you'd use string uploader, but we're not going to cover that today. What we want is string loader. So the most basic use for string loader is to load a file. For example, let's see if I have any assets I want to. Well, I don't have any text assets, but I do have. Actually, I do. We can load any of the DG5s since it's just JSON file. So let's look at here, this index. So I'm just going to use this as a path for the string loader. Right, and my output is literally the JSON. It just reads the file, the text file, and gives me an output. I can even parse it here using Json Parser. Right, and well, of course, you need some parsing rules. I'm not going to get too far into this. This is just an illustrative point. So let's delete that. Oops. And let's move on. So let's look at making what it takes to make a call. Right. So we already saw that you need a path. In this case, this is a local path, so a path to a file in your file space here. This can be also a web resource path, right? So it doesn't have to be local. Next, headers, right? We all know headers, and we'll take a look at the formatting of headers. The call type, post, get, put, delete, and so on. And then you get response outputs, right? You get a status, headers, output, so on. You can pick to send cookies if authorization is involved. And we'll briefly take a look at basic authorization and how to use that as well. Okay, so this is self-explanatory. Once you have it all filled out, you simply invoke to make that call. If it's auto-run, it will issue a call basically on any change of any of those fields. If it's not auto-run, then it'll make a call whenever you invoke. Yeah, well, simple enough. So what we want to do is make a few calls, right? So what I did is I found some API we can use. They're Yahoo Finance API, basically stocks, and we can use those to try and get some data and take a look at what happens. So I'm going to switch to basically my API documentation here, and we're going to make a few calls. So these are all various APIs we can run, right? And let's try to get market summary. So here, this market/get summary, right? And we have rules over here of what we need. Right? So the endpoint is fixed, and let's start with that. So let's go ahead and copy the endpoint. And what I'm going to do is, rather than just paste it in the path right away, I'm actually going to create a constructed path so that we can easily then replace the actual endpoints. So this goes here, right? And if we switch back, right? So then our path is market/summary, right? So let's see if we can copy this from somewhere. Yeah, here. Market/summary. So let's put a slash at the end here. Like so, and I think this is HTTPS, if memory serves. There, now we'll have a full path. So let's go ahead and link it to our path. Right, and let's try to do it now. Let's see what happens. Okay, we get 401, right? Missing application key. That's expected. We have no headers, right? So we didn't basically tell it that we have the right to pull this data. So let's keep moving. So what do we have here? So we have API key, right? This is a one-time key that I got issued for this free service. And you know, these are the headers. So we need those things in the header. So let's add this key to the header. So I'm going to copy the key name and go into my header and just pop it out so it's a little bit bigger. Paste it. Equals. Right, and I'm going to copy the key itself. So let's just copy it from here since it's easier to select. Right. So you can see the format here. It's a little bit different in our header, right? So we don't need to use quotes or colons. We use equal sign. So just simply going to say equals to this. So that's our key in the header. Let's take a look at what else we need in the header. Query string equals true, right? So we need to add that to the header. So we're going to copy this. All right, so to add another parameter to the header, I'm just going to move on to the next line, use and. That's our new header parameter equals true. That should be enough. And let's give it another shot. There we go. Look, we are getting some data. So now we have data, we need to go ahead and try to parse it. So to parse it, this is JSON obviously. To parse it, we're going to start with JSON block, right? In many cases, you can use JSON block to parse what you need. Sometimes your JSON is too complex or has too many nested components where you actually have to use a script block and go through the object kind of in the script and just get what you need. So we'll try JSON parser first. So if I just simply bind our JSON in here, what I get is not very useful, right? Because it just tries to parse the top very object, which is a market summary response. And there's not much in there. So let's try to add a selector to this. So I'm gonna try to get this, and then dot result. Right, you can see that result is the first object inside the market summary response object. Right, and let's see what that gets us. Right, that's a lot more like what we're looking for. So here we have markets. Right, and you know, market changes and so on, right? So we were able to obtain data from Yahoo Finance API, and we got the market movement summary, previous close, so on, right? So and in this case, this is not an issue, but there can be a case where your cross domain is not configured on your target server, and it simply does not allow you to make the call from the client. What this means is because your application is hosted at certain URL, right? And to make a data request from another URL, the cross domain settings, the CORS settings have to allow that. If they don't, you may need to figure out another way to make this call in such a way that it's not cross-domain, right? So that it's made, rather than being made from the client machine, you can make the call from the server. So we're going to take a look at how that works. Now, this only works in DSA. Let's go ahead and take a look. So right now we're making a call to this resource here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy our resource. And before you can make calls to this resource using a DSA proxy directly from the server, right, we need to add it to our list of proxies. So we're going to go to sys in our data tree. Again, only relevant for DSA situation. If you're working with Nagar version or something else, you probably will not have this ability. Then you're going to have to refer to your own server on how to do this. So we're going to go to sys and going to find course proxy rules. Right, I'm going to set this. I'm going to open, well, I can just make it bigger and add it to the end. They need to be comma separated, right? But to add a new line character in this editor, I actually have to do alt enter. Or I can pop it out like this, and then I can do enter, paste this new path, right? Do /star, meaning like anything starting with this path is fair game. There's the trick though. If you simply do apply OK, nothing's going to happen, because what you see is the original set menu has already gone away. So nothing's going to get executed. So what I need to do is copy this and close this box, go to set again, select everything, paste, and then invoke. All right, so now my CORS rules, basically my proxy rules, will allow that URL. To use that, right, to make a call, not from the client, but from the server, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this following syntax, /p, and then question mark, and then the rest of the URL. This forces the call to be made, rather than going from the client, which is where this page is loaded, to this resource. It's going to make the server make the call, right? And this page will look to its own server, DSA server, to fetch the data, right? So as we make the call, you see nothing changed. We still got the response, but except the difference is now the call is not being made from the client. So as far as this API server is concerned, it got a call from your DSA server, not from the client on which this web page is loaded. Right? So this is a tool for you to go around CORS issues, right? When if you get an error, I think it's 420. No, man, I can't remember. Actually, we can test it out. I do have a URL I can make a call to and actually get a cross-domain error. Stream loader. So let's try to make a call to E20. There we go. Okay, so this is a typical indication that a call is not allowed to go through, right? You get 0 status, basically no response, you get error. Right? This means CORS headers rejected this, right? It didn't allow it to go through. This can also happen when you try to hit HTTPS resources from HTTP page and a few other issues, right? However, I already have this path in my CORS headers. So if we take a look at what's there now, right, it's right here, right? So which means if I try to make the same call using a proxy, right, I'm still going to get an error because this is not a valid API server, but but now the call made it all the way through and I got a response. It's 500, right? I got an error message. So basically now I'm seeing the data back from the server, where without the proxy, I wasn't even able to get to the server at all. It just, my request just is not allowed to go across the network. Okay, so this is kind of a little sidestep here. Nevertheless, so we learned how to make a REST call and get some data back. Now we can actually try to populate our little project. So I'm going to copy this because this will be useful. And let's go to the project we've started a few lessons ago. Collapse here, right here. If you recall, we built this menu, right? Well, now let's populate this menu with some data. So let's get back to our API page and find something interesting we can create a menu out of. So let's go to stocks, and we can get, let's see, news, holders. Somewhere in here there were the ability to get movers, basically get stocks that made the most movements. Oh yeah, get movers here. So market / get movers. So let's use that to get a list of that we're going to use to populate the menu. All right, so here we're going to go in here to our navigation. We're going to add another group under the header. Just blow it up. Right click. We're going to paste our little API setup in here. Right, and the call we're going to make, so we don't need a proxy, so I'm going to remove that. And this was, I believe, get movers. Okay, those are our movers. Now our parser will not work because our parsing selector was from a prior call, which didn't have these objects. This one seems like has finance and result is what we need. So let's try this. Finance result. Okay. Okay, so this is almost what we need. So this gives us 3 categories of movers, right? So looks like we have day gainers, day losers, and most actives, right? But we need data sets within those. Now, if we looked at the actual JSON, we would see that there are sub arrays there of data. In order for us to dig deep enough to get those, I'm just going to put star in the drill down filter. What that should do is get us nested tables. There we go. Now we have a nested table of criteria, and I think there's something else. Yeah, and quotes. Quotes is what we want. All right, so now we have 3 nested tables. It just parsed inner objects into tables as well. So we have kind of table of tables, which is perfectly fine. So we're going to use basically join, maybe let's use one of these tables to drive our menu. So let's use day gainers. So it's going to be number 1, but we're not going to rely on its first position. What I'm going to do is filter this table. Right. I'm going to filter it for title. And just make it smaller so we can see this. Day gainers -US in quotes. All right, so this gives us one row. Right, and now we need this table, so I'm gonna just grab a table object from here and scroll down to quotes and just simply bind this cell right to our table. It has something like this. So we see that, so we have exchange code, we have some dates. Somewhere in here there was also, there's a symbol. Right, so we're going to list these symbols. Yeah, we're going to use that. So, but I also want to, yeah, we'll make them clickable and maybe obtain more information when you select a symbol. Okay, and there's probably nothing. Oh, there might be some more nested data that we could be using here, but I probably don't want to get any deeper into this. Okay, so we need to build a repeater, right? If this kind of goes back to lesson 1, based on this table, single line item will just show us the symbol name and it's going to be selectable. So let's get to it. So I'm going to add, well, first let's call this navigation list, nav list. This is going to be a vertical layout, of course. And I'm going to add a single item in here. All right, we'll call it Nav Item. I'm going to first blow it up just so everything gets set, and then go back and just change the height to, I don't know, 50 pixels. No, too much, 40. Yeah. Also, I don't want to shrink it at all because I want scroll bar to appear if it has to appear instead of shrinking each item to fit. And speaking of scroll bars, I'm going to go to my nav list and just set them right away. So vertical scrolling is going to be auto, and make scroll bars a little bit smaller. No fill. Let's make them blue-ish. And 3 pixels outline. There we go. Okay, so nav item. So the item itself is going to be horizontal with vertically center aligned. A little bit space from the start top from left and right, and it's going to contain text. Text is going to be dark gray. It will not have any offsets so that it's positioned by the item itself. And that's enough for now to create a symbol, convert to a symbol, or nav item. Get right back into it. And create a property called label and bind this property right to my text. Done. Okay, so now I'm going to delete this from here because remember I need a repeater. I don't need an item to actually sit there. I'm going to switch to repeater. I'm going to find my data as a source. Now I'm going to go to that symbol that I just created. Right? I only deleted its instance, remember. I didn't delete the actual symbol I created. So it's still here under my symbols. I'm going to use that as a symbol for my repeater. Right? And I'm going to open my table, switch to my renderer, which now shows my label property, and I'm going to bind the symbol column to my label. Okay, and there we go. So now I have a list of stocks. They're not selectable yet, so let's take care of that as well. And so I'm going to go inside. I'm going to use this selected property to drive visual changes. So I'm going to say stroke. I'm going to bind selected property to fill. Right? It's going to be a boolean. I'm going to say when it's true, when it's selected. I'm going to make this blue. Otherwise, it's going to be white. Right? And for the text, I'm going to do the same thing. Control, bind, I'm holding control, and that's Command on Mac. When I let go, this gives me a dialog. Right? This is what the binding dialog is. Again, it's a boolean mapping. And when it's true, text is going to be dark gray. When it's false, when it's selected, text is going to be white. When it's false, not selected, text is going to be dark gray. And done. Okay. Now I'm going to change my cursor to be hand type. And now the last thing I need to do is to create an event on which this gets selected. Now I can use the selection settings of the repeater group itself. If you recall, right, we'll go to selection, right? So I can enable selection here. However, I prefer to do it from the inside out. So I'm going to add in my symbol, I'm going to add a state block. All right. I'm going to add one item to it, and it's going to be affecting my selected property. Important, selected property of my root group. All right, and it's going to set it to true. I don't want it serialized, so I'm going to turn the serialization off. Right, and it's going to be driven by click. Done. Okay, so now we should be able to select. Okay, so now next thing is we need to obtain our selection. So somehow we need feedback that gives us what we've selected. And that part is extremely easy. Close this. I'm going to find a block called select rows. And when I drop it onto my repeater data flow, it's already pre-bound. Again, there's nothing special about these bindings. They're just there to to speed things up, but it's the same thing as you taking the table, binding it to the input, and then taking the index of a selected item, which is this selected index, and binding it to the indices. And that returns a row that's currently selected. So, right, as I select items, you see this outputs a row of what has just been selected. Next, let's get some more information about what's been selected. So we have a stock symbol, right? There should be an API to get details about that stock. So let's head back to our API list. And let's see, get details. Deprecating, is there another? How about get insights? That's interesting. Let's get insights about that stock. Maybe financials and insights. So to get financials, no, that's too much information. I don't want to get whole financials. I want to get just a quote. Maybe get news. That's category. We want news about specific stock. Okay, well, let's use this deprecating API. I guess it's not deprecated yet. So until it gets deprecated, let's try to use it. Okay, so here, so this is the path, right? Stock/get detail. So I'm just going to copy that, switch back. I'm going to copy this whole setup. Actually, I'm going to cut it from here, and I'm going to now move on to my main area and do it there. Okay, so this is our endpoint minus the slash, right? Now we need to construct the header, and this time the header is not going to be static. So until now, our header was just fixed value. Now our header is going to have to include the symbol that we select. Actually, is it a header? Well, I might be wrong. It may not be a header. Okay, sorry, it's query parameters. So our header remains static. It's going to have three things that it already has, I believe. Yes. So we query parameters. So that's what we need. So these are the query parameters that we need to add: region, language, and then symbol. So let's switch back. Now query parameters are something that's added to the end of the URL. And I'm going to do a separate maybe replace block for query parameters. I'm going to say, was it region equals, and then basically placeholder, then and language equals placeholder and symbol equals placeholder. Okay, now we're going to go down here and replace our placeholders with actual values. Now region is going to be fixed. We don't have it coming from any selections. Language will also be fixed because that's not coming from any selections either. It's just always English for us. However, the symbol, right, that guy will be parameterized. Oops, so it's not symbol. We used sim. My bad. So sim would come from the selection of this menu. So let's go ahead and grab the selection from here. So we're going to go into this selected rows, open this table, go back to our content, right? And we're going to bind this symbol into here. So now we have dynamic query parameters that include currently selected symbol. So I'm going to go ahead and add one more input to our concat block and use our query parameter string in it. So now the full path, right, if you look at it, includes the URL plus query parameters. And that should be enough to get the data. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. We got the data, right, but it's not going to be parsed correctly, so we have to fix the parser. Right, so our default key statistics actually. So in this case, this JSON probably has a lot of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this whole JSON. I'm going to go to my JSON editor that I prefer. All right, paste it here, parse it into a tree, and go through it to see what I want. Right, so this just gives me the whole structure of the response, and I'm going to take a look. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here, as you can see, and I only need a few details. For example, this is the company info. I could use that. So summary profile. So let's see if I can parse for summary profile. Okay, all right, so this gives me company data. Cool, I can use to populate it. So I'm going to use another Json parser to get other data. So I'm going to switch back here and keep exploring. Price. Let's see, regular markets open. So price.regular market open is basically, okay, so that's open price. Oh, boy, there's a lot of stuff here. So there's a market change, market open. So let me try to parse the whole price section and see if we can get nested objects. All right, so we'll get something like this. All right, and yeah, this is good. It says volume market open, day high, somewhere in here there's probably current price, regular market, previous close, pre-market, regular market price. I think this previous close. These are the lows. There it is. So that's the current price. Wow. Okay, that's a good gain if I read this correctly. Anyway, so this has what we want. So these two tables basically give us what we want. So let's go ahead and use them to create some content. So first, let's use the company info table. And I'm not going to get too creative here. We'll just drop some texts to show some of this information. All right, so our company, so company name, business summary. Where's the business name? That's interesting. It's got everything but the business name. Okay, so be it. We'll just show the market summary. Got to make sure that it's wrapped. Okay, maybe smaller font. Okay, cool. So underneath that, probably need some spacing here. Let's do 20 pixel vertical spacing. All right, so we can, I don't know, let's just do website. I mean, you can see that we can add the whole address and whatever. We'll just do website. All right, that's fine. So, and now let's show the stock info. So I'm just going to duplicate this and I need a concat because this is going to be a label value type deal. So I'm going to say concat. So the market open. Go all the way back here for market open here. Regular market open, regular and raw. Let's use rounded. I think that's the difference. Okay, so we're going to bind this cell here, right? And that going to go in here. I'm going to duplicate. Go to this one. Say day high. And get another one. Someone here that was day low. There's a day low. Let's open this data flow here. Day low. And finally, current market price. Regular market price. There we go. So open this data flow. Now, one thing I would like to mention is normally, if I wasn't build this within a constraint of a lesson, what I would be doing, of course, is creating symbols that would allow me to reuse this quite a bit faster. But since we're not focusing in that area of learning right now, we're just trying to get our API populated as soon as we can. Okay, so we're fine. The only thing that's missing is our block, to get data, our string loader is not set to run on change, meaning that it will not rerun when you reselect something. So I'm going to enable auto run. This will make it basically update on change. And also, it does have loading indicator, which I can use to show that it's doing something, right? So the user is not guessing if something is happening or not. So what I'm going to do is just simply duplicate one of the texts. Right, and I'm going to bind this loading indicator. I'm going to say if it's true, and say loading. Otherwise, say load complete. Again, this is very crude, because it would also say load complete before it starts loading if that situation ever occurs. But for our purposes here, it'll do just fine. So let's give it a shot. Let's pick another company. All right, so you see it's loading. So there we go, load complete. It failed to obtain the data. That's kind of interesting. So let's see what happened. 503, service unavailable. Well, that's just great. That's what happens with free API, I suppose. So let's try something else. Oh, there it is. Okay, this one loaded fine. Let's go back to this one. Maybe this company was pulled from the market while we were building this. Oh, never mind. It worked this time. So this was a server fluke on their side. Okay, so as you can see, we have somewhat of a project going, right? So we have biggest day movers for today. We can explore each, get information about the company, and get some values. There was one last item that I wanted to add to our project because our API section has get chart option. I have not explored that yet. I'm really interested in seeing what it returns. So let's go ahead and try to get it. So this has more query parameters. So let's copy the endpoint. So what I'm going to do is go back here. I'm going to copy this whole setup, duplicate it. I'm going to turn off auto run for now so it doesn't waste my, this is free access and it has 500 calls limit. So I don't want to run out of my limit before I'm done with the lesson here. So we're going to paste the endpoint here, right? And I'm going to construct a few more query parameters. So language and region stay, symbol stays, but there was another one, range 1D. So we need to add a range, and 1 day I think is just fine for us. And interval, right? Interval 5M, range 1D. So let's just keep those settings. I don't think they care what order they're in, so let's just do range and interval 1D, interval 5M, and here I'm going to end range equals range and interval equals int. I think that should do. Let's go ahead and run it. Did it work? Did it work? Oh, it worked. Okay, something worked. So I'm going to copy this and bring it to our Json Parser just to explore it a bit so I don't have to guess what's where. Okay, tree chart result, 0 meta, timestamp. Okay, so this has timestamps and quotes. Wow, this is going to take a lot of parsing because timestamps are easy. However, associating them with data will take some scripting probably. Well, maybe not. Maybe we can do this in a quick way. So let's try this. So first we need to get timestamp, which is going to be chart.result.timestamp. So let's do that. So Json Parser. Chart.result.timestamp. I spelled something. Let's try this. Chart.result. Oops. Chart.result. Oh, object 0 timestamp. So I can't go that far. Maybe I can. Let's try this. I don't know if this is going to work. Oh, okay. It worked, seems like. there we go. Okay, so we got our timestamps. All right. Now let's try to get our data. So this is going to be a little bit more complicated. So chart.result.0.indicators.quote.0 dot close. Okay, so chart.result.0.indicators. So let me just take a bit at a time so I don't chart.result.0.indicators, right? And .quote.0 .quote element 0 .close. Bam. Okay, we got something here. So now what I'm going to do is do column mapping. I'm going to remap this column. So because it's called value, I'm going to make it. I'm going to call it timestamp TS from value. This one stays as is. I'm going to do the join. Right. So I'm going to do join these two tables. Right, and it's left join is fine. They're going to be joined in row, basically just the number of rows, and that gives us timestamp and the value. So we should be able to plot this. So let's go ahead, add the chart to our area here. All right, so this whole bottom section is going to be the chart. And we will have an episode on charts. There's a lot to be said about charts and chart options, but for now, just drag this column. We want to plot to the chart. We're going to say that our date time axis is TS, and our linear axis is values. Fine with that. Let's do area series. Excuse my dog. She is sensing a mailman. And there we go. And we have a chart. So we're done. Awesome. All right, so we just need to apply just a bit of styling to this chart so it's legible. At least we need to make text color darker so it stands out against the background, and maybe axis lines a little bit more visible as well. Again, there are literally dozens of styling, if not hundreds of styling options, so we're not gonna just try and cover them all. Just change some basics so it's a little bit usable. So as you can see, the dates are not being displayed properly. That's because, actually, that's a good point. So the reason that's happening is because they use, they don't use milliseconds epoch time, they use seconds epoch time. So the chart does not understand them as dates. So what we need to do is add 3 more zeros to the end of them. So rather than TS just coming from value directly, it's going to come from value. So I first have to convert it to a string because I want to add 3 0 characters rather than add 0 to a number and do math. Right? And then let's do 0 0 0. There we go. So now, as you can see, chart immediately recognized those as, well, as dates, and our chart looks a lot better now. So I'm not going to go any further styling this chart. The last element that I want to show in here has to do with authorization. Now, this API does not require any, but what do you do with the ones that do? So there are several types of authorization you may run into. I can't possibly cover them all because some intricate ways are controlled by the server, but very common one is basic, right? So when you deal with basic authorization, let me just copy this and turn off auto run so we don't run API. So when you deal with basic authorization, first of all, it's a header property, and it's pretty easy to set up. So the syntax is simple enough. So in addition to any other header elements that you would have a header component called authorization equals basic, right? And then followed by space and base 64 encoded username and password, right? And so what I wanted to show is how to get that. Right? There are utilities online to do that, to do base 64 encoding. I personally stay away from those because you never know if someone's storing these combinations, and then we'll try them somewhere at some point. So you can do it here. So in the script, right? So I'm going to add two parameters, two properties to my script. Username and password. I'm only doing this to make it this bit more reusable, right? And my script will be very simple. So add that username, so that's the value of a username, plus colon, plus add dot password. Right? So this creates a string of username and password separated by a column, and then encode base 64 this, right? And all of that needs to be returned. Okay, done. So auto run, it's going to error out obviously when there's no password. When there is a password, so let's do username user, and password will be bingo, right? So, oops, on missing braces here, parentheses, otherwise it only encodes the password. There. So it gives you this, base 64 encoded username and password. You just copy that and use it in your header as such. And of course, you have to do and then the rest of your header. And that's it. Or to maintain convention, let's just use and in the beginning of every header component. So there, this would will allow you to use basic authorization with your web call and send username and password as basically base 64 encoded data. Other methods include tokens, and those work. Again, there are rules on how to create these headers. So somewhere in the header you would have a parameter called token, and then they would followed by a token, right, and so on. So all these rules are typically written out in documentation for whatever API you're trying to use. Right? As long as you remember that the syntax for the header here is basically name equals value, right, or component equals value, and then and ampersand sign connecting basically multiple header parameters, right? No spaces there. One more typical item you would find in the header, again, for some reason not required for this API, but you would all very often find content type. Content dash type equals application slash JSON, right? That's a very common header that you would almost always find required. I think that's it. Really, I don't think anything else really stands out as something common and universal enough to include in this lesson. And we're already running somewhat long. I'll see if I can edit some of this to shorten it up a bit, but that's it. So this gives you, I think, excellent tools to fetch external data and build your applications where you can mesh some of the data, your local data and third-party data, and run logic, interconnect the two, and so on.